Welcome to Leap Listens. I'm Sarah McGregor.
And I'm Roger Kalis.
Leap Listens is brought to you by Leap Create. We are a people communications agency and we work with organisations to help communicate their culture, to attract and recruit candidates and to engage and retain employees.
Today we are joined by Noel Thomas, Creative Director and one of the founders of CA3 and Eli Onboarding. Welcome, Noel.
Thanks very much. Great to be here, Roger and Sarah.
Noel, tell us a little bit about your background.
I've been in employer branding long enough to know that it used to be called RecAd. My first career with a company called Barker's back in 2000, which doesn't even exist anymore. And now, as I say, I'm running what I believe is to be the best agency in the industry, obviously CA3, though I'm a little bit biased.
Yes, possibly just a little. Yeah, and obviously, we'll do some judicious
editing.
No,
one of the best.
We're all friends here. I did recognise all the places that you previously worked, some of which no longer exist. But I know it's always amusing because, particularly at awards things, you have a job title of head of crayons, which always makes me chuckle. And I seem to recall as well one of the compares going, "That can't be right."
Yeah, I think that always stems from the fact that people think creatives, sit there with their pens and their crayons and just draw silly pictures and come up with silly ideas. Whereas I think, again, very biased, but I think I was always been for one that thinks that the creators are the ones that really deliver that uniqueness, both for the agency, but sometimes, but certainly in terms of, creating the right message for the client and getting it out there. I think, it's what we do, I feel, that helps make an employer look unique. And more than crayons, but that's always been the job title that's stuck.
Excellent.
So today, Noel, we're going to be talking about onboarding and culture. And what are your best practice tips for embedding, introducing culture in the onboarding process?
Well, it's an interesting one because I think if you take a step back from what most people look as onboarding, so that time after offer acceptance, I think you can look at onboarding as that time from that first moment of contact by a potential candidate, that moment where they come into contact with an advert, or perhaps they say a social post, or perhaps they interact with a recruitment agency or something like that. Ultimately, even at that point, they're starting to build an idea of what your culture's like, and often these days, that might happen after they've applied. I think we've seen a lot of changes in the way that people search and apply for jobs now. It seems like it's a lot easier to apply for a job. So often people are, and then they're going back and starting to build an idea of what the organization looks like and what their culture represents, so that they can make a judgment call on whether they'll then stay within that application process and go through to the end. And I think we're certainly seeing a lot of that in the graduate market, where grads are applying for upwards of 10 jobs and then making a decision on one they want. Definitely.
Where do you think they're looking to find clues of what the culture's like? What are their measures of a culture if they're doing that retrospectively?
So I think all over the place, and I think this is probably one of the real challenges that faces organizations these days, particularly ones that don't have maybe the resources of the bigger global ones, is where people are looking to build the idea of what your culture is like. And I think ultimately it's everywhere. It's across your social channels, it's on your careers website, it's through your recruitment advertising. It might be on a blog, a vlog, a podcast like we are here today. It's the way you talk about stuff on even on job boards and job ads and events, and as I say, recruitment agencies, and how maybe they talk about you. And I think that does pose a certain problem for organizations as to trying to keep it consistent, trying to keep it authentic and real and compelling, which is why I guess I think that there's more and more synergy these days between that sort of consumer and corporate employer brands, because the lines are being blurred. And I guess, forward-thinking marketing teams are realizing that a great culture is also great for business, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think Sarah's going to jump in there.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a really good point. It's something that we've talked about with other guests, haven't we, about that line blurring between employer brand and your actual brand. So for me, like, I always think like recruitment is you've probably heard this before, recruitment is the dating, and employment is the marriage. So do you sort of see onboarding as the honeymoon period?
I think it's a lovely analogy. Yeah, I guess, yeah, definitely. I think for me, I think often organisations have a habit of, let's say, dropping the ball after offer acceptance.
Yeah.
And I guess in that way, it's maybe not like a honeymoon, but it really should be. Yes, I guess ultimately you really should have planned in advance where you're going, make sure both parties love the beach or the ski slope or wherever they're going, and the events have been planned in advance and all those kind of bits and pieces. So I think in the right world, yes, absolutely, it should be the honeymoon. And I think that the challenges a lot of organisation faces is that this idea of who owns onboarding, I think, is one of the things we always have an interest in, because if you look up to that offer acceptance, you have talent and attraction teams involved there. HR have oversight, but then once that offer is accepted, that there seems to be a knowledge gap there. Who's going to take on the pre-boarding, a bit before day one? Who's going to take on the onboarding to get up to speed? You've got lots of different teams from all over a business involved, learning and development. You've got line managers, you've got HR, obviously. There might still be an element of TA involved as well. So I think what's really, really important, going back to that booking the perfect place for your honeymoon, it is ensuring that you create an onboarding process with the employee at the heart of it. So understanding what happens at offer acceptance, both from a compliance, but just as importantly, an engagement perspective is really, really important. So making sure you've got the right airline, the right hotel, the right activities, and all that kind of stuff to make sure that honeymoon period is fantastic, and it sets you up for the rest of your marriage, I guess. Yeah,
no, that's really good. And you're probably familiar with the 4 C's model by Dr. Talia Bauer about compliance, clarification, culture and connection. And it seems that organizations are great at the compliance and the clarification part, but fall short of the culture and the connection. I was just interested to understand from you, Noel, what sort of creative ideas that you have to onboard employees.
But just before you do, so are you saying, Sarah, that they end up caravanning in Scunthorpe?
Basically.
Not that there's anything wrong with the place, but maybe not as a honeymoon destination.
I think I remember going to Skegness in a caravan once, and I truly enjoyed it, actually. But I guess it was the people I was with. So
there we
go. So yeah, I think you're probably right, but I actually think a lot of organisations even get compliance wrong. Because I think if you look at that compliance process, often it has been in place for a long time. It's using technology which is outdated. It's asking candidates to do the same thing over and over again. A form that asks for the same information 3 times over is a regular occurrence when we come to review, an organisation's onboarding experience. So, though I think they understand what needs to happen in terms of that employee joining, bank details, on all the other bits and pieces, it's often still not delivered in a way which you would like, just like that caravan in Skegness or Booker or whatever. It's just not creating that lovely experience, and often candidates are still left going, well, where am I in this process? So I think even though most organisations know what needs to happen for someone to come on board on day one, there's still a lot of ball dropping there definitely happening. But I guess beyond that, how do you build a connection with someone during pre-boarding, during onboarding? How do you start to embed your culture? I think the first is coming back to what I said before. You've got to create a process which has the employee at the heart of it. So what things are going to help them feel like part of the organization, particularly in that pre-boarding phase, because these days most people are going to be working hybrid, certainly if their role doesn't need them to be in an office. So there's going to be a lot of virtual stuff that goes on, but also before that, it might still only be completely virtual. They might have interviewed virtually. They might never have even been into the office. So I think you need to look at your onboarding process with that in mind. How do you get across the culture of your business, or your charity in a way which would work virtually, certainly. But then for me, it's about picking moments along that onboarding timeline and ensuring that the people that are responsible for them know what they're meant to be doing, I guess, ultimately. And that could be your line managers. That could be the introduction of a buddy scheme. That might be you getting ERG groups involved or learning and development involved, and just make sure that you've got different parties who are all bringing part of their culture and your culture to an employee, maybe in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's really that's really interesting, and I think what you're describing is certainly some of the experiences that we've had, particularly bringing in some of those other groups, looking at various different key moments. The word that you hear so much these days is authentic, and things being authentic. How do you kind of ensure, where possible, that that it is an authentic experience, and that what you're promising during that stage is then what's delivered? Because I think you could kind of processize that, and you could have, well, this is the experience that people have during that pre-boarding stage, so we get them on board. How do you, what things do you do to ensure that it's an authentic experience, and also point out to people where you're saying, well, look, you're kind of promising this, but you're delivering something else, and that's potentially a problem when people join?
I mean, I think the short answer to that is just don't lie, I guess, ultimately. I mean, it sounds silly, but, never say something that isn't true. And, job seekers aren't idiots, certainly. And I think you shouldn't be trying to present this perfected version of your organization to anyone at any stage. Sometimes something which someone might see as a negative, or you might feel as a negative, another person might see as a massive, massive positive. And I think that's really true. But I think if you get closer to the onboarding and the pre-boarding side of this, ultimately, again, it's about just ensuring that people are being connected to your culture in ways which are real. So you can use employee-generated content. We've seen a big uptake in that, or certainly a much more of acceptance in that, through lockdown, because that was pretty much all we could produce. Mm-hmm. So I think people are very accepting of that these days. But actually what works better is building real human connections, not just having a recording of someone talking. So we work with a lot of clients to help them introduce more social aspects into that onboarding timeline. That's, closed social walls, it's instant messaging, it's live events and Q&As, and as I was saying before, getting your ERG groups involved early so people can start to explore other things that's offered within your organization, and I guess trying to make that experience as human as possible, because really it's the people that deliver the culture for you. And if you can get more of them involved, again, helping them understand what their role is, though, then I think that's really, really, really key.
And Ernie, you said, Noel, that you have experiences where in early careers you've got, say, like people applying for, upwards of 10 different organizations. Do you get any feedback after people have chosen the one that they joined as to why they chose that one? And was any of that anything to do with the onboarding experience? Have you got any kind of anecdotes or examples where that's definitely been a key advantage for someone?
So I don't think I've got any anecdotes off the top of my head in terms of we chose you because your onboarding was the best. Much as I'd like one of those comments to be there, but I think we have demonstrated that by helping reduce an organisation's dropout before day one. And I think with early careers specifically, well, there's a number of challenges really, but the first is you're going to be engaging with these people potentially 9 months, you know, from that offer acceptance up to the day they start. You know, you're probably offering, you know, some, you know, students in January, and actually they might not start till September. So there's a really long patch there where, you know, even the best person might change their mind. They might change who they are in that time, particularly at that age. You know, they might read something about you, you know, 4 months down the line, which then starts to put them off. So I think with early careers specifically, it's about how can you keep that pre-boarding engagement consistent and ongoing, and again, start to build that sense of community. And I think with early careers, you've got a real advantage, which is they love technology. So if you can give them a place to go to where they can meet each other, they can interact, they can chat, they can be social, but also a place where you have eyes on all that's going on there, and you can communicate with them, and you can keep them up to date, and you can connect them with their program leads and the recruiters who they've been part of, and do it all in one place, you know, a hub that they can come back to time and time again, then I think you're going to see positive effects on that dropout, and positive effects on, you know, that first sort of 3 months attrition, which everyone's worried about. You know, you'll see that people do feel like they're part of the community and want to stay.
That's great. Thank you, Noel. I think that's...
Noel, you've had your 15 minutes.
15 minutes of fame, yeah.
One question I would actually like to ask, and it's something we're going to ask all our guests, is about what your top reads have been this year.
Noel doesn't read.
My top reads. Can it be about anything, or?
Yeah, podcast, audiobook, anything.
Yeah, reading for me means listening, because I only listen to books now. So
I tend to, in my spare time, like to escape into sort of fantasy novels and wizards and this and that. And it's almost feel like that's part of what fuels the creative side of me, you know, just going into worlds where everything is insane and alien and this and that. And I guess that's, you know, the kind of books I read. I mean, I went back to re-listen to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy recently, all 4 books, and I think if ever there's an example of incredibly creative writing and ideas in another world, I think that really is one.
That's a lovely answer.
That is a great answer. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Noel, so much for chatting with us. That was really interesting.
It was, really good. And thanks again for joining us.
No, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really enjoyed being part of it.
And thank you for listening to our Leap Listens podcast. To listen to other experts in the industry, head on over to our website. That's leapcreate.co.uk, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. And of course, if you have any people communication challenges requiring highly creative solutions, please reach out to me. I'm Roger, or Sarah McGregor on LinkedIn. Thanks very much.